Okay, so hi everyone. Myself Akshun Kuthiala, and I am currently a final year computer science graduate at in India. And today I would be talking about my GSoC project, that is API documentation generator. So this is my great team, that is Diago Sampaio, Guilherme Gazzo, Rodrigo Nascimento, and that's me, Akshun. During this process, I learned a lot about technologies and libraries that I wouldn't have actually explored. So yeah, it was a really great experience for me as well. These would be the topics that I would be discussing in today's talk. So yeah, let's get into it. First, I would like to talk about why this project was actually required and what was the need for this to even be there. Before this project, the traditional way of how we maintained the API documentations was through manually writing it in Markdown files. So that would require a technician or expert to go through the changes in the code base and also update the documentation accordingly. As you can see, it is a very labor intensive job and also error prone. Someone might miss some deprecations or some parameters, and that would lead to disparities in the documentation as well as the code. So the main objective of this project was to have a single source of truth, that is the code or the API definitions itself, and that would be reflected in the API documentation so that the users and developers can be up to date and also it is synchronous with the code. So the project's main aim was to streamline and automate the API documentations. During the whole process, we explored a number of available options, and we chose the compiler one. Let me just give you a brief about each and every so that we know why we came to this solution. So the first approach was to write the open API specifications itself. That would be converted into documentations. It would have automated some part of the process, but we still had to write a lot of template and you had to use variables and all to automate the API endpoints. It was still a very labor intensive job. So we explored more and found out a library, which is a very good library actually, TSOA. What it does is it helps us to use JS docs and TypeScript annotations to actually parse the code into a documentation. But the problem with this approach was it used a controller based structure, and our monorepo and code structure is very it was not very compatible with this approach. So we had to make a lot of changes just to make it work. So then we came to the compiler option. Actually, Diego is the one who gave me the idea of using this library and exploring it. So what this does is we are using the TypeScript compiler API to pass the code and generate the open API specifications, and that is rendered, and uh, I'll be talking about in the implementation section. Yeah, so first let me show you the approach or what we actually wanted to do. So as you can see, here are all the files which contain API endpoints and all these logout login. These are the endpoints, and we wanted the documentation to be synchronous with the code changes. So anything that is changed here, we want the documentation to reflect it. So what we did was use TypeScript compiler API to parse through it and collect all the metadata that we actually wanted or that was relevant to us for generating the documentation, and we then stored it as a JSON file. So the stored object was then again uh, sent to a library. We use the this OpenAPI 3ts, which is a very good library. What it does is it converts our information that we collected using the compiler API and generates a valid OpenAPI specification file, which can be used to generate documentation. So this part is let me okay. So this complete file is generated automatically generated through the data we passed using the compiler API and also using the Open API 3ts library. So this saved us a lot of manual labor, and we were able to, quickly generate all these endpoints which were valid and structured nicely. After this, we also made use of the Docker image of Swagger UI so that we can use the generated JSON file and host it as a API documentation so that we can refer to it whenever needed. So I already talked about the implementation. Let me show you the results. So yeah, this is the generated API documentation, and it is completely parsed and generated through the code base itself. This part would be the mock server, which can be used to, send requests to the server and see the results. This part is yet to be implemented, and it is in our future plans. So other than that, all these endpoints that you see, these are in the code base itself. The ones I showed you just now, all these are mapping to those definitions itself, and these contain all the parameters or results and the type. So like it is a very well defined documentation, and it also consists of all these color schemes, so you can be like see what you want to see. It has headers and all. Other than that, I'll show you is the room chat endpoints. Okay, so I want to see the anal. Yeah. So it also contains, nested objects also. This was one of the major challenges that we faced during the implementation process. All these objects, arrays and structures, we weren't able to correctly pass it at the start, but then we tweaked the code a bit and handled a lot of edge cases. So it now handles like correctly parses most of the solutions. Also, as you can see, this iMessage, it is not directly passed from the code, but it is a custom defined schema. Rocket.Chat actually has a lot of schemas which are custom defined. Let me just show you. All these you can see, iRoom, iUser, and various such tons of these are actually custom defined, and it is using a reference link to these schemas and passing it accordingly. So that's the demo part. As I already told you, in the future we plan to add a mock server and also the authentication part, so that the user don't have to set up everything or use Postman and all. He or she can just go to our documentations and use the mock server to get the results and see what he or she wants for the project. Other than that, or the schema I told you about, the custom schemas, we tried to automate the generation of those also, but we face some problems in how we are passing it right now. So we are trying different approaches, and it is a currently work in progress. Other than that, we are also thinking about changing the UI to match the Rocket Chat's UI and adding unit tests to make it more scalable and manageable in the future. These would be the links that you can refer to see about the projects and all. And that's it. Thank you.